Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. I am Kris. This was requested. This is Seerah, Prophet Muhammad 23, Night Journey and Ascension to Heavens 3. I've been trying to get to this video. I've just got a lot of things going on. Plate's been pretty full. So before we get started, click. See how easy that is? If you could do that, helps me out. There's a thanks button here. You can click on that, donate to the channel. This is going to be 4 18+ minute videos. Started the video because I'm so good. You didn't even know I paused the video because I'm so good. All right, let's play.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We have some audio problems. Brother Rusli or testing. Is that better? Yeah, okay. So inshallah, last Wednesday we had discussed the journey of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, and we had reached the place where the Prophet ﷺ had been assigned the 50 salawat, and then, if you like, the descent began. And the problem with, as we said, the descent, or the problem with even most of the narration of Isra al-Mi'raj, it is almost impossible to piece together the exact order of events. We simply have a hadith, and therefore from this point onwards, what we have is just a collection of incidents. We don't know the exact order they occurred in. And of the first incidents that I will mention, we don't know chronologically which one came first. There's a very long hadith in Musnad Imam Ahmed where the Prophet ﷺ mentions one incident that he came across, and then there are other hadith in Bukhari and Muslim about other incidents. Of this hadith in Musnad Imam Ahmed, the Prophet ﷺ said, on the night that I went on Isra wal Mi'raj, I smelt a fragrance that was very sweet. And so I asked Jibreel, what is this beautiful fragrance? So Jibreel said, this is the...
I know what he said. We got some steaks on the grill, baby. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm going to go back, because I know that's what it is.
What is this beautiful fragrance? So Jibreel said, this is the fragrance of the one who used to comb the hair of the daughter of Fir'aun.
I was completely wrong. My apologies. Yep, that's why I never became a prophet. That, and I was never visited.
Mashitatu ibnati Fir'aun, the one who used to comb the hair of the daughter of Fir'aun and her children. So the fragrance is coming from her and her children. So the Prophet ﷺ said, I asked Jibreel, what is their story? How come their fragrance is so strong? So Jibreel said, once when she was combing the hair of the daughter of Fir'aun, the comb fell from her hands, and she said, Bismillah. So the daughter said, surely you mean the name of my father, because for her daughter's perspective, my father is God. And so this woman said, no, my Lord and your Lord is Allah, and the Lord of your father is Allah. So she told this girl that your father is not God, is not Allah. Rather, Allah is my Lord and your Lord and the Lord of your father. And the girl said, do you want me to tell my father you said this? And this woman, whose name we don't even know, said, yes, go ahead. And so when Fir'aun found out, he called this slave girl, because she's a servant and a slave girl, and asked her, are you saying you have a Rabb besides me? Because Fir'aun used to say, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la. And Fir'aun used to say, as the Quran says, قَالَ هَلْ عَلِمْتُ لَكُمْ إِلَهٍ غَيْرِي. Did I ever teach you there's another God besides me? Because he has to teach his people about God. And this is exactly what he asked this lady as well. Did I teach you? Do you know there's another God besides me? And so the woman said, with the same bravery that she said to this young girl, she said to the Fir'aun himself, she said, yes, my Lord and your Lord is Allah. My Rabb and your Rabb is Allah. And so Fir'aun ordered that a cauldron be put of fire, and it was boiled in front of her, and she was told that she has to throw her own children into the fire. She has to throw her own children into the fire one by one. We don't know how many children she had. She has to throw her own children into the fire one by one, or else acknowledge Fir'aun as her Rabb. And so, faced with this dilemma, she said, I have one request, O Fir'aun. Fir'aun said, what? He said, that you bury me and my children all together. You take all of our flesh and bones and you bury them in one location. Don't split them up into different locations. So Fir'aun said, this is a condition that we have upon you. If that's what you want, then you will get this condition fulfilled. And so one by one, her children were thrown in, until finally the last one that was left was her baby that was suckling at her bosom. And this was the one that she could not, she paused at. And so the baby spoke to his own mother, we don't know if it was a boy or girl, and said, oh my mother, go forth and drop yourself in. Proceed forward, because this punishment of this world is nothing compared to the punishment of the next. And so she threw herself in, and then Ibn Abbas commented that there were only 4 who spoke from the cradle, from being a baby. And he said this one, and Isa when he was a baby, and the story of Jurayj, which we mentioned in a halaqah after a Friday night, and the witness of Yusuf. This is Ibn Abbas's opinion, that Shahid of Yusuf is a baby. We talked about that when we said the class, that it doesn't seem to be, it's not a hadith, it's something that Ibn Abbas derived, and Allah knows best, but that is not a true thing, that Shahid Yusuf is not a baby. But this hadith clearly mentions the story of Fir'aun's daughter's seamstress or helper. And what is amazing is that, subhanAllah, we don't even know her name, but the Prophet ﷺ recorded her plight and narrated it to the ummah. Her courage and bravery, Allah had willed that it would be preserved for the ummah. Her sacrifice, Allah had willed that the people of Fir'aun might not know of her sacrifice, but it would be remembered and mentioned by the greatest ummah and the largest ummah, and the world would know of her story and the story of her children, and she would become a role model for all of the future Muslim generations. So Allah preserved this story, and it is amazing that this story, even though it happened for Musa's ummah, yet it is preserved in our ummah. And the iman is of course exemplary, and yet it is preserved in our ummah, and it is not preserved in the ummah of Musa alayhi salam, because this story is not mentioned in the Old Testament, and it's not found in the Jewish tradition and scriptures. The Prophet ﷺ also said in Sahih Bukhari, that after salah had been prescribed upon him, ثُمَّ دَخَلْتُ الْجَنَّةِ, then I entered into Jannah. Then I entered into Jannah, and I saw in it tents made out of pearls, and I saw that the soil of Jannah was made out of musk, which is of course the most expensive perfume. We already mentioned last time that the wisdom of entering Jannah after meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is obvious, and that is that the priority is to meet Allah. It is appropriate that as he's going up directly to meet Allah. Once he meets Allah and the meeting is over, then he can go and see the other sights that Allah Azza wa Jal had willed for him. And this is exactly what happened, that after the meeting with Allah, then all of these other incidents happen. Here we have a theological question, and that is, it is narrated, or at least this is the interpretation of many scholars, that nobody has entered Jannah since the time of Adam alayhi salam. And this is something that perhaps there's even some references in hadith literature as well, that the first person to enter Jannah after Adam alayhi salam will be our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This has been narrated in some hadith. So and this is after the day of judgment is over, after the sirat, all of this, when the doors will be open for the first time. Of course, as for the issue of the shaheed, a lot of people get confused. The shaheed, he is not living in Jannah. The shaheed is flying around in Jannah. Right? There's a difference between living in Jannah, occupying Jannah, versus seeing Jannah. Right? And the shaheed is not in his body in Jannah. The shaheed is in the body of a green bird. And he is hanging from the chandeliers of Jannah. right? But he's not actually living in Jannah. So he's close, but not quite in there. This is the shaheed. The question therefore comes for the Prophet ﷺ, how do we interpret this? And to be honest, there is no clear-cut interpretation. One can say that the phrase, the first person to enter Jannah after Adam is our Prophet ﷺ, still applies because he entered it in Isra wal Mi'raj, and then he will enter it in Yawm al-Qiyamah. So there's no contradiction that the phrase that the first person to enter Jannah after Adam will be our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is true. But except that he entered it once at Isra wal Mi'raj, and once he will enter it, of course, for the final time, and that is after Yawm al-Qiyamah. And another interpretation is that when he entered Jannah, he is entering it again similar to the shaheed, i.e. looking at it, or and there are some versions of the hadith which says طَلَعْتُ عَلَى الْجَنَّةِ, I saw Jannah, and that's different than saying enter Jannah. Right? So to see Jannah is different than entering Jannah. So perhaps this is an uninterpretation, that he didn't actually enter Jannah, because there's also another theological point, and this is not as explicit, but there is this point of whoever enters Jannah will never exit from it, especially when the hisab happens. So how then does one interpret the Prophet came in and out? Again, there's no clear-cut response. We have one of two interpretations. Firstly, it's an exception, which is possible. Secondly, he didn't actually enter, rather he surveyed Jannah. And this is also a plausible interpretation, which is supported by some of the ahadith that mention Isra wal Mi'raj.
I'm going to say he was able to enter and he was able to leave, because if God allows you to come in, I'm pretty sure God can allow you to go. I don't think that God's going to be like, oh, you know what? You can't leave. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. You know, the gates are locked. I don't even know how to get out. I'm pretty sure there's a workaround. God can. I got you in here, bud. Don't even worry about it. I can think of a cool, like a little water slide that just spirals down and gets you right on back to safety. He can do anything. If a God can create heavens and all this and that, I'm pretty sure they know how to pick a lock to get you back out through the front gate. So we don't have to worry about how was he flying around this. It doesn't matter. That part doesn't really matter at all. Was able to get in, was able to get out. We're cool.
The process, that's all he said about, by the way, of this entering of Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ also said he saw many of the punishments of hell. And this perhaps gives credence to the fact he didn't actually enter Jannah, because obviously he didn't enter hell, obviously, right? So when he's describing Jannah, then he's describing hell. This looks like he's describing it as an overseer, somebody who's looking in, peering in, telling us what is in Jannah and what is in Jahannam. So this does seem to make sense, that the Prophet ﷺ is basically telling us as a description of what he saw, and not necessarily as somebody having entered Jannah. But if somebody were to say this, it is not problematic also, that he entered Jannah. Of course, obviously he did not enter A'udhu Billah, the fire of hell, but he saw the punishments of the fire of hell, and a number of them are mentioned explicitly. And I'm putting together a lot of different...
There's no reason for him to go into hell. Like that's not reserved for him. So it could be one of those things where it's like, hey, look, like a window. Hey, look, you see through that? That's awaiting the other people. And he could look through and be like, cool, I don't need to see that anymore. And they were like, yeah, I completely agree. We're just going to close the blinds. Don't have to worry about that. So I'm pretty sure that he doesn't have to worry about that. That's just my opinion on that.
Narrations. Again, the Prophet ﷺ is giving many different ahadith. When I went to Isra, I saw this punishment. When I went to Isra, I saw that punishment. So I'm putting it together. This is not in one hadith that all of these punishments are narrated. So in one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, I saw the punishment of the one who stole an orphan's money. who stole orphans' money, that they had noses like that of camels, disfigured, they're looking ugly. And they would be eating coals made out of fire, and their mouths would swallow these coals, and it would come out through their anuses. And that's exactly what Allah says in the Quran, that those who eat أموال اليتامى ظلما إنما يأكلون في بطونهم نارا, that they're eating the fire of hell. So the Prophet ﷺ said, I saw people, they were literally eating coals from Jahannam, and it's going through their bodies, and these were the people who would eat orphans' wealth and property. The Prophet ﷺ said in one hadith that he saw people who had nails of copper, and they were scratching their bodies and their faces with this, and these were the people who used to backbite all the time, speaking of others, so their flesh will be disfigured on the day of judgment, because they would disfigure the flesh of others. Because when you backbite, then you are scarring their flesh, their honor, their prestige. So in retaliation, this will be the punishment for the one who does this. The Prophet ﷺ said, I saw, and in each of these, he said, he sees something, he asked Jibreel, who are these people? In each of these ones, he cannot understand. He asks Jibreel, who are they? Jibreel tells them. The Prophet ﷺ said, I saw people, they had in front of them pure meat, and they had rotten, infested meat. And they were eating the rotten and infested meat and avoiding the pure meat. And I said to Jibreel, who are these people? And Jibreel said, these are the people that used to fornicate. They would leave the halal, meaning their spouses, and they would go to the haram. They would leave the halal and they would go to the haram. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that he saw people with such large bellies that they could not stand up. They were on the ground. And animals were being brought over them to trample over them as a punishment. And when he asked who they were, Jibreel said, these were the people who would get their money from riba. These are the people who get their money from riba, from interest. And of course the connotation here is greed. The connotation here is go get as fat as you can. Because that's what you wanted. You wanted to get money. Go and get your fatness, and these are your animals, and these are all that you own. Because once upon a time when you were rich, you had a lot of animals. It was a package of being rich. In our times, if you're rich, you have fancy cars and houses. In those days, if you were rich, you had to have a lot of animals, right? So the point being here, these are your animals. See what good they have done you on the day of judgment. And the Prophet ﷺ also said that he saw people who were cutting their own lips and their tongues, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, with nails of scissors of copper and scissors of punishment and fire. And he asked Jibreel who these people were. Jibreel said, these were the people who used to tell.
These are the people who used to tell stories on YouTube? Oh no. When is the YouTube punishment going to come around? That's what I need to know. I need to end this channel.
Others to do good, and they would forget themselves, and we seek Allah's refuge from being amongst such people. The Prophet ﷺ also said, and I saw Dajjal. And I saw Dajjal, and one of his eyes was bloated. One of his eyes was basically not seeing. So he is describing Dajjal. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that I saw Dajjal, and I will tell you something about Dajjal that no other prophet has ever told his people, and that is that his left eye is like a rotten grape. So one of his eyes is basically bloated and not normal. So you look at it, you know that he's deformed. So and the Prophet ﷺ said, know that Dajjal is a'war, and a'war is one-eyed. Know that Dajjal is a'war, and a'war means he is one-eyed. These are some of the things that we hear about when the Prophet ﷺ is coming back down. We don't have any detailed narration as we do when he was going up. He met every single heaven, he met a certain prophet. We don't have any such narrations. All we have is these tidbits, we put them together, and Allah knows what order it happened in. We don't know the exact order it happened in. The Prophet ﷺ came back down to Jerusalem, and he then rerode Buraq. So Buraq is tied up in Jerusalem, right? Remember, Buraq is an animal that is for this world to transport him from Mecca to Jerusalem. As for the transportation from Jerusalem to the heavens, this is what is called Al-Mi'raj. So when he gets back down to Jerusalem, he then rides the Buraq back to Medina. And there are some narrations that are not fully authentic, but there's no problem in them to affirm them as well, that the Prophet ﷺ passed by 3 caravans of the Quraysh that he recognized. He recognized 3 caravans of the Quraysh on his way back. And on one of them, he recognized certain of the people of the Quraysh, because again, everybody knows everybody in Mecca. In another one, he was feeling thirsty, so he drank some of the water from there's an urn or a public, if you like, well, not a well, but a big canister that everybody is going to drink from in the caravan. So he just took a canister from this and he drank, because this is not private property. This is where the large urn that the water is in. And in a third caravan, he said that I saw so-and-so, and he mentioned him by name, looking for a camel that they had lost. They could not find it. They could not find a camel, and they were searching for a camel that had been lost. So these are the 3 caravans that he said that he saw. When he came back to Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ went back to sleep, he said. And he woke up in the haram. He woke up in the haram. And this clearly shows, therefore, that the actual Isra took place from the haram itself to Baytul Maqdis and then back to the haram. And this is in conformity with the Quran, because the Quran says, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylam min al-masjid al-harami ila al-masjid al-aqsa. So any report that says the Prophet was sleeping in his house or in the house of Hani, we interpret this by saying he was sleeping there, then Jibreel took him to the haram. And then from the haram, Jibreel took him to Baytul Maqdis. Then from Baytul Maqdis, Jibreel brought him back to the haram. So the Prophet ﷺ, the actual Isra took place from one masjid to the other masjid, from the Mecca to Jerusalem. The Prophet ﷺ, when he woke up, he himself told us the story. So this story we have in the first person. This story we have in the first person. That the Prophet ﷺ said, when I woke up the next morning, I felt an anxiety. I felt an anxiety about how am I going to tell the people of what happened to me. And this shows that Allah had told him that he has to tell the people, because the Prophet ﷺ never did anything without being told. The role of the Prophet is that he has to be told what to do. He doesn't do anything of his own accord. So Allah must have told him, you need to tell the people. So the Prophet ﷺ said, I felt an anxiety. How am I going to tell the people, and what will they say, and they are going to reject me. And this shows his humanity, that despite being the Prophet of God ﷺ, he's also a human being. He feels the anxiety, he feels the stress that any of us would feel for our mundane jobs. Can you imagine the stress for his job?
All right, sorry. Let it go a little bit longer than I wanted, but we'll end it there. About 45 seconds over. Oh well. All right. I don't really have any other questions or comments, because I pretty much said it. Anyways, yeah, I'm going to end it here. We will be back with part 2. Like I said, I don't really have anything to ask. Just kind of listening, making comments here and there. So I'll end it here. Back with part 2. Till then, have a good day, have a good night.